Balake. Where is Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Aaron.
Aaron is right here, everyone. Happy Easter. I'm not Christian, but I'll just say happy Easter anyway. I do like food. And to me, that's what in my household, Easter is still about Easter dinner, whether you believe, whether you're a Christian or not. By the way, do you guys like my new shirt? I'm mixing it up a little bit. This color is part of the spring collection. It's called SP Blue. I got it for just for SPs. And I've got a darker blue version of this that I'm going to be debuting later in the week as well. So anyhow, guys, if you're watching live or if you're watching the replay, do me a favor, please hit that like button, drop a little comment. It does seem to help with the algorithm. And if you really want to piss off David Miscavige, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Okay, so what we're here to talk about today is, I've mentioned this in a previous video, in a longer video, but it deserves its own treatment, is the brutal, critical, hopefully fatal mistake that Danny Masterson's defense team has made in the first trial that has opened the door in this retrial that's about to begin in a week or two here to devastating Scientology evidence being entered in, hopefully, entered into the case as evidence and permitted to be shown to the jury that was not permitted to be shown in the first trial. For those of you who may not know, we're talking about Danny Masterson, the actor, the Scientologist. He is standing trial on 3 counts of I'm being careful with my words here because YouTube doesn't like you to use certain words this early in a video. Danny Masterson is charged with brutally attacking several women, all former Scientologists. Essentially, what we know is that from about 1995 to about 2003 or 4, Danny Masterson is known to have attacked about 6 or 7 women, most Scientologists, 1 or 2 non-Scientologists. He's standing trial for attacks on 3 of those women. The first trial was a hung jury. A mistrial was declared. That was several months ago. The new trial is about to begin in a week or two. There are reports. People who are even vaguely familiar with Scientology know that Scientology has a system that requires members to report on each other about even the smallest perceived violations of proper ethical conduct or proper conduct of a Scientologist. These reports are called knowledge reports usually, or KRs. There's a ton of different kind of reports in Scientology, the most common of which is called a knowledge report or a KR. Now, most people who are somewhat familiar with Scientology also understand that Scientology has this procedure called auditing. It's like a one-on-one counseling situation. This device called an e-meter is involved. And in normal circumstances, what you say in an auditing session is supposed to be considered confidential. You're not supposed to be allowed to get in trouble for what you say in an auditing session. There are certain types of auditing sessions, though, that are an exception to that rule. And those are called security checks or sec checks. And the procedure for a security check or a sec check is exactly the same as a normal auditing session, but it doesn't have the protection of an auditing session. In other words, you are not only allowed to get in trouble for what you say in a sec check, you know that you're going to get in trouble. It's part of the reason you're getting the sec check. And because there's this distinction in the world of Scientology between like a protected auditing session and a non-protected auditing session called a sec check, in the beginning of a sec check session, the auditor specifically says, I'm not auditing you. It's a little weird. It's the same procedure. It is an auditing session, but the phrase, I am not auditing you, means you are going to be getting in trouble for anything you admit to in this session. That literally is the reason for that statement, and that is what that means. Now, in the Danny Masterson attacks against Scientologists, one of the Jane Does in particular came forward to this. I'm not saying only one person came forward, but this one in particular came forward to the Scientology authorities and said, Danny Masterson did this to me. Now, Scientology has its own internal ways of dealing with things, none of which ever involve including the authorities. In fact, calling the authorities, alerting the authorities on another Scientologist is grounds for dismissal from Scientology, no matter what the reasons. Even if it's an attack of an adult nature of the kind that we're talking about, or even if it's an attack of this nature against children, you're not allowed to involve the authorities or you will be expelled. But they have their internal, they want to handle all their stuff internally. So in Danny's case, sec checks were done on Danny and on the Jane Doe and on one of the key witnesses, Danny Masterson's sort of assistant hanger-on named Luke Watson. Sec checks were done on all three of these individuals to get to the bottom of the truth of what actually happened. It's weird. Even though Scientology doesn't want to seek justice in these in affairs like this in a traditional sense, they're not going to involve the authorities. They don't want to protect society from predators. They still are pretty dedicated to getting to the bottom. They want to know the nitty-gritty. They want to know all the ins and outs, all of the details, time, place, form, and event, who, what, when, where, why, how. They want to know all of it, and they want to know those details from everyone. And that is the purpose of a sec check. Now, because these sec checks are considered actionable, you can get in trouble for them. After a sec check session is over, the auditor sits down and actually writes an official knowledge report on the person who they were sec checking and puts in the report, these are the details of what, Mr. Jones or Danny Masterson, this is what Danny Masterson did. This is what Danny Masterson said that he did. This is an official report from essentially what is essentially a Scientology investigator. The way this was handled, these sec checks, is that, so you had Danny, you had Luke Watson, and you had the Jane Doe. One person would go in on a sec check. The sec checker would come out, write a session KR, give a copy of that KR to the other two people who were not in that sec check session. So in other words, everybody was seeing the details of exactly what had just been admitted to, or the details that had just been provided in that sec check session. And the purpose of this is to sort of stir up the minds of the people who are then now going to get their turn to have their sec check session. Their memories, memories are jogged, details are shaken loose, emotions are stirred up. And this is supposed to be part of the process of getting to the bottom of it, confronting each other with contradictions in what each individual person is saying. So you have sec check KRs written on Danny, written on Luke, written on Jane Doe. And this isn't just a one-time thing. This is like a repetitive round robin situation. Like if you're getting a sec check, you might go in on 10, 20, 30 different sessions. It's not just a one-off. These aren't interviews. These are sec check sessions. These are auditing sessions without the protection of an auditing session. These session KRs are evidence of what Danny has done. These session KRs were shared with Danny, with Luke, and with the Jane Doe. Jane Doe, and by the way, this isn't information that's just being revealed for the first time. It's just nobody's really spoken about these details and connected all the dots and painted the picture of what all this actually means. This particular Jane Doe kept a copy of all of these session KRs and shared those KRs with other Scientologists who read them and are familiar with them, and then in turn wrote their own reports based on information that they had. Reports about these session KRs and about these instances were sent directly to David Miscavige. This is one of the reasons you see Scientology so freaking worried about this case. The idea that Miscavige is just some ecclesiastical leader that sits in an ivory tower and worries himself about the purity of L. Ron Hubbard's technology, and he doesn't have any involvement in day-to-day operations of the church, certainly would never be involved in something as unimportant to him as a dispute between two parishioners. Particularly, and I'll get specific in this nature because this did come up in the first case. Jane Doe 1's mother wrote a very specific report about all of this, about how she felt Danny wasn't being handled properly. And the report written by one of the Jane Doe's mother and the session KRs were not allowed to be admitted as evidence in the first case and the first trial. And the reason for that is that the defense team said, they told the judge in their opening, I guess in the opening statement is where this gets discussed, or maybe in the pretrial hearing, I'm not exactly sure. They weren't going to be denying that the alleged incidents occurred. They were just going to be denying that they were non-consensual. And the evidence in the Scientology reports becomes applicable if the defense team starts to deny that these incidents even occurred in the first place. And the fact that the defense said they weren't going to deny these events occurred is a major reason, if not the reason, why those reports weren't allowed to be admitted as evidence in the first trial. The defense team made a mistake, and in the process of the first trial, started to challenge the Jane Does in their testimony as to whether these incidents even occurred in the first place. Uh-oh, oopsie, that was a huge mistake. That is why in this new trial, we are not only possibly going to see copies of these reports entered in as evidence, and the jury may be allowed to see them. That is why we are being allowed, that is why the prosecution is allowed to bring Claire Headley as an expert witness to testify as to the Scientology aspects of the case and of these reports. This is absolutely huge, because the contents of these session KRs will show that Danny Masterson actually, by the end of all the sec checks, completely verified and agreed with the details of the attack as alleged by the Jane Doe. He just didn't agree that it met the definition of the R word. Do you get that? It's absolutely batshit crazy. So Danny's basically like, yes, that happened. Yes, I did that. Yes, she said that. Yes, I did that. But it's not, and I guess by this time I can probably say, but it's not rape. And the sec checker, and one of the people involved in this administration of these sec checks even admitted at the time that Danny Masterson has a criminal moral code. That in his mind, it's not a matter of arguing about the details. It's a matter of, but that's not a crime. That's just okay. That's acceptable. If the jury is allowed to see these reports, if the jury is allowed to see the session KRs, if the jury is allowed to see the report written by the Jane Doe's mother, it ends up basically being a completely different trial. And that is why I am so much more optimistic. It's one of the major reasons why I'm so much more optimistic that the outcome of this retrial will be a conviction, even though the outcome of the first trial was a hung jury. And I don't know, it just feels, it's just so, it makes me so giddy to think that the reason this is allowed to, this could be allowed to unfold this way is because of the missteps of the incredibly high-priced and famous defense attorneys that Danny Masterson is paying a fortune for. His previous attorney, Tom Mesereau, who isn't the attorney now it's Rob Cohen. His previous attorney, Tom Mesereau, made an even bigger misstep in the pretrial hearing for the first trial, but it's not even worth getting into that one right now. So I just wanted to do a standalone video making that specific aspect of this retrial crystal clear, because when I've mentioned it before, it's been buried within a longer video. So let me just get to a couple super chats here, and then we'll wrap this one up. Abel S. donating towards a new black shirt. I finally wear a shirt that's not black. And now I'm being trolled for doing so. Anyway, thank you, Abel S. I appreciate the super chat. What is this? Sheldon's Cat's Mom with a super sticker. Thank you, Sheldon's Cat's Mom. I appreciate it. Why you the canoe? Oh, why Youth Canoe or just Youth Canoe? It's Youth Canoe there, just Youth Canoe. Was that 70s show popular in Scientology? The question sort of, staff members and Sea Org members don't really have time to watch TV. So it's not easy for something to be popular, like for a show to be popular in Scientology. I can tell you, I mean, I don't remember, I don't have any particular memories of it being particularly popular to the extent such a thing is even possible. But thank you for the question, Youth Canoe. All right. Wait, what? Wait, what? Says the blue shirt looks lovely. I hope Masterson Fries never liked him. I wonder who will be brought on to counteract Claire Headley. I don't think there is such a thing. Like there's no such, I'm not aware of any such thing as like a counter expert Scientology witness, if there is such a thing. So how would it be handled if this wasn't about Scientology? I guess you could have like, you could have the prosecution calling some sort of a mental health expert, and then you could have the defense calling another mental health expert to two experts to disagree on something. If we tried to figure out how that could apply to Scientology testimony, I do not think there is such a thing. Claire Headley would actually only be the second person that I know of ever in history to be certified by a court as an expert witness on the subject of Scientology. The first one, the first and only other one, was Jesse Prince. And that's why he wrote a book. I believe the title of Jesse Prince's book is The Expert Witness. And that's because Jesse was the only person ever certified as an expert witness in Scientology. Claire Headley will be the second. And it's pretty amazing. Okay, one more here. Arrow Louise K. The new shirt color looks great. Well, thank you very much. I do have a darker blue version that I'll be wearing sometime later this week or next week. I mean, it's already Saturday, so I don't know. Okay, everybody, that's all I got on this. I don't know if I'm going to be doing any more today. Time's running short. I got a birthday party to get to. And yeah, so let me get this comment off the screen if I can figure out how. Thanks for watching, you guys. Thanks for everyone who watches. Thanks to everyone who watches until the very end. And I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not,